Welcome to the FitFilliate podcast, where we talk about behavior and behavior-based conversations as they relate to CrossFit affiliate owners and coaches. My name's Lisa Hetherington, and I'm your co-host. Sitting alongside me are Tony and Chuck, the founders of FitFilliate.
Kinda. Can you hear me breathing in the mic? I've been having trouble getting my... You hear that?
Can't hear that.
Can't hear you breathing, but we can see you breathing because you're still upright, which is good. So on that note, welcome to our next episode of FitFilliate podcast. Joined today by Tony, but also the one and only Tosh for his repeat performance with us. How are you, good sirs?
Great. I was just caught myself for a moment because I've heard you say it twice or three times, and I hear you say tiny, but you're saying Tony.
Yeah.
And I was getting ready to start calling him Tiny as well because that's a great name for him, but it's Tony, but it just sounds like Tiny. What's up, Tony? What's up, Tiny?
Can we focus on the soulful sounds of Tosh's breathing, please? Not that my name comes off as Tiny with Lisa's accent. That would be much better.
It's usually giving me a hard time about my accent, but I think that name might stick now.
Well, it's mostly just watching you get the hang of or actually nailing which podcast or which recording we're doing, because like Lisa has to record so many of these. So I'm always like, come on, mess it up. And she never does. So well. I'm waiting for it with bated breath.
Oh, it's good to have the support of the people that I care about most, isn't it?
Yeah, that's love.
We do love you.
Yeah. You're only saying that because we're recording now. Anyway, enough of our interaction, I guess. Tosh has recently returned unless you've been living underneath a rock, from the amazing cross-Atlantic row. So I'm sure that's something we will definitely cover today, as well as Diesel Days and the amazing work that he's doing through the Big Fish Foundation.
The fun of bringing Tosh on here is there's no shortage of things we get to talk about.
Oh, so many things.
He's either running around someplace probably half naked, swimming underneath the ocean in the Arctic or something like that, or rowing a boat across the ocean. But I see you've been making your rounds telling everybody about the story, but we do want to talk about that one because obviously it's the elephant in the room. But I'm just pumped that you're back on here because obviously I love you and your handsome face.
I like hanging out with you too, man. I'm excited for you to get up here to Boulder this couple months now with a handful of your people from the FitFilliate community, and we'll put them through a Diesel Day. And yeah, it's exciting. In fact, you're on my to-do list of people to reach out to and secure up.
It's funny, you were actually on mine, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to record this podcast with him, so I'm just going to see him then, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I hope this snow melts before you get here because it is cold and snowing. We're in 6 degrees out, 7 degrees out right now. We're getting another 12 inches today.
Well, I mean,
it's great for the participants, but it's not nice. It makes things a lot harder, more challenging for the host, especially when you want to deliver something that's really powerful. And I mean, we could just jump right in. Because I'm getting ready to talk about this on my podcast, and
sure,
as I develop a book and trying to just hear myself think, but and hear your thoughts, right? So I just try to design these events that allow people to have intimate experiences with themselves, with others, share experience, so they can explore psychological, emotional, physical domains. And inevitably, when people try to set these events up, they try to induce too many variables of friction, right? It's like, oh, well, let's add some sleep deprivation, let's add some hunger, let's add some altitude, let's add some heat, let's also add me talking shit to you, try to overwhelm people with friction points. Right. And when they get into a training scenario, they're either diluted across all these friction points to manage, and we don't have an opportunity to really microscope in and help them through management processes for one friction point, right? Let alone two. And it's like, hey, how about at the beginning of training, we just introduce one abnormality and we can work through that. And how you work through that will relate to other ones. And then we'll add a different one the next time. We'll add a different one the next time. And then maybe we'll add two that you've already experienced and see how they interact with each other or how they manifest. Or maybe we'll add one that you've already gained some capacity at managing, and we'll add a new one to you, and we'll small dose, but people aren't interested in that, Let's
Well,
overwhelm us with everything.
Yeah,
And
let's make it as hard ass as you can,
yeah,
and destroy people, and because that's the reputation that's like you
look,
want.
and
It's like,
then yeah, and then let's get 10% out of spending all this energy on one event. Let's get 10% of growth out of it when we could do a lot less friction and get 80% growth out of it. And
Yeah.
if you're focused on growth versus focused on wearing a badge on your chest or a ribbon or a, hey, look at me, I'm on Instagram and I just did this massively hard fucking thing. It's like you got a small dose, and we're getting ready to release the Hard Way project, and it's all about small dosing with the
Yeah.
same concept. We're going to release this subscription service through Crooked Butterfly in April, and it's this training mindset to get you, like, what is being hard? How do you get so fucking hard? Well, it's not overnight. It's not through one event. It's a series of events over and over, repetition, small building steps through years. And because it's the time, like Rob Orlando talked about this 12 years ago when I met him, time under tension, that's what builds strength, like lasting strength. And if we want to build lasting strength in our hearts, it's about practicing your values over and over and over again.
For sure.
If you want to build lasting strength in your head, it's about processes that you continually stay disciplined with over and over and over again. They don't have to be really big, huge, extreme processes or events. It's just this. In fact, it's harder to do discipline when it's the easiest to not have the implications for not having discipline.
Oh,
That was lengthy. What do I mean? It's easy to have discipline when the stakes are high and
Yeah.
it seems like a really, really big thing. And it's like, oh, I have to have discipline here. It's much harder to have discipline around the small, tiny, simple things because it's so easy to like, it doesn't matter if I do or I don't. Like making my bed, like when I find myself getting off in weird directions and just feeling in a rut, I go back to these small, little, tiny, simple things. And what am I not doing in my day-to-day life that's so, oh, you know what? Make your bed. And make it right. Don't just try to like push all the sheets and stuff, and then pull the big heavy blanket over the top so it looks smooth. Let's make it right. Let's just start right there. Let's just make sure you're brushing your teeth 3 times a day. And you'll find that those things translate to a better way of life and the disciplined life. Somebody famous said, I'll remember in a minute, but like, discipline's the path to happiness. I think Buddha said that. And it's not discipline like beat yourself over the head with a stick and walk on fire. That's not what he's talking about,
For
Anyways,
sure.
I don't know how we got here. I got motivated.
Well, we're here now, and that's what's important. But I really want to focus on one thing. When the fuck did it become brush your teeth 3 times a day? I thought it was just 2. I'm already slacking on that one. I feel like I got to do 3.
Well, some people overbrush. I've heard 2. I've heard after every meal.
All these things seem to get a little bit more regular the older you get, because maybe it's the little things, right? Like, so now I find some weird degree of enjoyment out of going to brush my teeth these days, that just shows you that I got a lot of gray in my beard, I think. But it just is what it is. Anyway, enough about teeth brushing. You just said a whole lot of things that I really want to talk about in there. And then, well, particularly what I do want to talk about, the primary reason you're on here is the Hard Way project, because I'm very excited about that. But I also want to talk about Diesel Day and how it parlays into that. But you're spot on in terms of, and I don't think anybody understands the value of preparation in putting your mind to something quite like a man who just rowed a boat across the ocean. So you got that going for everybody listening.
Yeah.
But
I didn't do it by myself.
True.
I was part of a team, right? So it's not just like I didn't just row a boat. Like, it'd be pretty cool if I did alone, but I don't think I've got the ability to do that. I'm a little spooked. But it was a team of us, right? Like, it was a 4-person effort, which beautiful.
We were just talking when Tosh came on that there's still some people rowing, and we're like by themselves. It's like, why would you?
Yeah.
Just it's
impressive nonetheless. 1, 4, 3. I don't care how many people. I don't care if you're a team of Vikings and you did it. Whatever year you did it, like, that's still, the ocean is not a bitch. That is not nobody's friend. I wanted to get Chris will come on here eventually, but I think it'd be really fun to have both of you guys on here, because you two, I don't know if anybody would get anything done, because there'd be just a lot of shit talking. But it'd be worth it.
Not a lot gets done, but man, we explore. I love Chris, man. He is when he brings out the best in me. I'd like to think that I do the same for him, and we really challenge each other. We hold each other really accountable, well, in a good, loving way. And there's also conflict too, right? but it's not unhealthy conflict. It's good conflict. And it's not like
Yeah.
big spooky, like I hate you or I'm going to fight you. It's not the kind of conflict I'm talking about. It's more of a challenging of beliefs and a challenging of, do you really believe that? Then why aren't you acting that? And consistency. And he's just, yeah, Chris is awesome. I can't gush enough about him.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously you two are like two of my best friends that I've ever made through the affiliate community. But I feel like anybody who's listening to this is laugh. If they know either of you guys, do just start laughing, because the 100% being around either of you, you're getting challenged. One way, whether it's going to be physical, like you pop into the gym being like 30 muscle ups per time, I'm like, cold, okay, let's just do it. Or if it's like, Chris calling you out being like, I hear you saying that, but I don't see you doing that. So and I'm like, fuck, you got me, right? And so you just end up getting sniper. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing that is important in what you were just talking about, though, is I don't want to call it. I hate that everybody uses like culture and toxicity. They wrap these things around it, but we for sure live in this time when maybe it's a there's a fascination with instant gratification, and suffering, as it so calls, or intensity seems to be this thing now that everybody's focused, because like you can get a good dose of it really, really quickly. And it seems like, the drug of choice for so many people who want to like hashtag grind and go out and do all these things. And I'm like, does the stimulus match, the intended input or the output? And I think you kind of nailed it in terms of like putting in the work, but going back to the basics. But that's the boring stuff that nobody wants to do. Right. And like, getting to that point.
Let me spin you for a second. This is how it is. You're going to get, this is like just different directions, and finish scratching the lottery ticket off on your own. If you're listening and it's like, oh, I want to finish exploring that. Well, explore it on your own, because I'm going in a different direction already. This whole suffering thing, right? Like I just released a podcast the other day called The Pain Cave, smashing people that use, going to the pain cave and whatever. And then I got some feedback on it, good, bad, or not good or bad, weighing it as a judgment, but like, hey, reinforcing or challenging thoughts I said. And I had a really good exchange today with a buddy of mine, because he likes to call it suffering. He likes to call it the pain cave, and, back and forth with it a little bit. And it's really semantics, right?
Sure.
Whether what I'm talking about, like you want to call it pain cave or you want to call it suffering, fine. I have to let that go. That some people choose to use the word suffering and it means definition number 2, where I choose to reserve the word suffering for definition number 1, and it both can coexist. And but one thing that's really important with a lot of the leadership training and me sharing my thoughts with people on podcasts like yours or my own is have a definition for a word, and let's try to have a universal understanding of what that word means, because you could be saying suffering and meaning definition 2, and I could be saying suffering and meaning definition number 1, and it creates a discordance or a cognitive dissonance or whatever term you want to use between the two of us in understanding what we're doing or why and the intentions. And so, I really try to reconcile definitions. I'm a word geek lately. Say what you mean what you say. And I just don't use the word suffering because I define it in a certain way. I don't use the word go into the pain cave to mean, hey, I'm trying to do whatever. I reserve that for very special occasions. It's like you're not allowed to yell fire in a movie theater. You get arrested. Right? Like you're not allowed to yell bomb in an airport. Those words are reserved when you're using them in certain environments or certain contexts, right? And I think we need to use that. We talked about that, I think, in the last podcast.
Yeah.
I'm talking really fast today. Why am I talking so fast?
It's all right. We sped you up. Fast. He's not actually talking as fast, people. We've sped him up.
Yeah, man, I gotta check in. I gotta scan myself a little bit, man. I found myself talking fast, moving fast, being anxious lately. Not anxious, but
check in with that left hand to slow you back down.
Yeah.
Back to the pinky.
I just getting excited. I dork out about this stuff. I love it. Passionate. But yeah, you just, because you triggered me, I think, because I get easily triggered.
I got you.
Tony has that effect on everyone.
Yeah, right.
Well, so you're the one that broke me of the word suffering. I mean, I don't think I really ever use it incessantly, but it was through the conversations that we had both on the podcast and then multiple personal conversations, just in terms of like, choosing the power of positive terminology, right? So like, using the word suffering to identify, kind of to your point, like, varying different definitions, but like, are you actually suffering, right? Like, and you were the one that actually said it to me. I don't remember where we were, but I remember hearing you say something like that. And I was like, I'm struggling or something like that. And then you're the one that broke me. And I was like, And then obviously, you basically waged an all-out war on the term suffering and the identification, the definition of suffering, which I think is cool. But I think
because I'm woke.
Well, don't
I get
woke,
offended easily.
Cancels. You were on Savant's podcast, so you're just gonna definitely end up. You can definitely up on the other side of wokeness there. So there's a couple of things that I think are, well, for one, I want to talk a little bit about the Diesel Day thing. Now, last time you were on, I know we talked about this privately, but last time you were on, we were talking about Diesel Day. And then since then, I've now completed Diesel Day, and it's not really necessarily about the completion of it, but having experienced it firsthand, as opposed to just being the outsider watching and being appreciative of it. And, the work that I knew you put into it and really what it meant, like the value that it conveyed to the people who would participate in it, I always thought was cool. But then having been through it and having, completed it, whatever you want to call it, I'm mindful not to say survived it, because I don't think it's even remotely about that. It's mostly about experiencing it. Far exceeded anything that I could have ever possibly imagined as it applied to it. And that is one of the reasons why we were so motivated to get so many of the clients on our side, the FitFilliate clients, to experience it personally. I think that it can't be understated enough. Your ability to understand the human condition and what is important in that sort of application of that human condition is one of the reasons that we're such good friends, and why we love having you on the podcast, because you do understand the value of doing the hard things, but also the value of doing the consistency things. And it was kind of through that process of experiencing Diesel Day that, like, what an impressive, without giving away so much of the magic of it, because I don't want to ruin it for anybody else who participates of it, but what an impressive experience to have been through, not because of the physicality of it or anything else, but the curated nature of what that event actually looks like as a participant versus somebody on the outside just looking at it.
Yeah. I don't know. I might've just got lucky at the programming or the designing, or maybe, at some subconscious level, it's a culmination of a lot of experiences in the training world, not only, physical training for athletes or just everyday people, but also training in the military aspect. And just, it is a testament to consistency, because I'm all over again. My experiences, I focus very much on consistency. I have some beliefs about consistency. I don't believe that there's a Tosh in situation A, there's a Tosh in situation B, there's a Tosh when he's with an audience A and a Tosh. Like, there's some small deviations to meet audiences where you're at, but largely at the heart of who Tosh is, I'm talking about myself in third person, right? Like, that's okay. The value construct and what I believe in is consistent across all endeavors, all domains, right? Mm-hmm. And I have them value constructs in these leadership beliefs, principles, and just personal conduct beliefs, right? Yeah. And so when you build consistently across all aspects of your life, and then it just ends up magically populating when you design something. And I think that's what happened for me. A testament to the Diesel Day is that I look at it and say, wow, I'm consistent across all these things. And then when I'm designing something, that consistency comes through, and then just got luck. So maybe it's not luck, but I believe in
definitely not luck,
tremendously. It is physically challenging for everybody, but it's, we've had 60-year-old women go through. We've had overweight individuals come through. Yeah, we've had people with medical conditions. We've had ridiculously phenomenal athletes come through. And no matter who you are, Diesel Day is exactly hard and tough for you based on where you're at on your measuring stick of where tough is for you. The event, I always say, the event will meet you with where you're at in a very constructive and productive way, right? And then we set the stage in the physical world in order to create moments for your psychological being to express itself when you're being physically challenged, because now you're letting your guard down, you're letting, control of behaviors just disappear because you're taxed physically, your internal resources are being taxed there. And now we can get to really the true essence of how you think or how you behave and what you believe. And that's really what Diesel Day is about, is getting into your head, so that you can then build processes to overcome challenge, adversity, unknown, uncertainty, and whatever stresses that are presented. And that's where you have the best to gain in growth, right? And then
Yeah.
these lessons that I teach, the checking in with the left hand, can be applied with consistency across battlefield, boardroom, breakfast table, and ballpark, right? The 4 Bs. And so if you practice those things and you train your head to have consistency, then there's not a lot of calculation that's required. Oh, I'm in situation A, it requires me to have this process. Now I'm in situation B, and it requires me to have this process. It builds habit and thinking that helps you gain momentum and get the initial momentum to overcome something.
Right.
And then you tap back into the rational brain after you have a response in order to finesse your response from a rational place vice an emotional place. And that's
For
what
sure.
that's what Diesel Days are about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody obviously has a profound experience. I mean, this is coming from my place and my experience, but Matt, having been through it together, it's been very fun for us because like we still to this day hash it out a lot. In his weekly coaching calls with me as his coach, it's one of the things that regularly comes up. The principles of the left hand are still there, and it's funny because like obviously I love you, so it's going to come across like I'm blowing smoke up your ass on this whole podcast, but I can tell you there's a few times when I hate you more than in the middle of the night when you're like, you sure you couldn't go faster, harder? I'm like, fuck, son of a bitch. But I mean, you are, if nothing else, the poster child of consistency. And that's exactly what I would expect. And, maybe I wanted you to be a little bit easier on me in the middle of the night, in the middle of, 12, 13, 14 hours later. But I think for me personally, having been through Diesel Day, obviously it broke a whole lot of paradigms. And for us, me as a coach, particularly, and really what we believe in with FitFilliate is that sort of behavior augmentation, but awareness precedes action in almost every category. And one of the beautiful things of, at first for me was gymnastics, and gymnastics is really just human behavior, right? Because you have this demonstration of perfection, and then really where do you fall below that? And then, that's really where CrossFit became so valuable and powerful to me, was you had this environment where you could elicit and curate these behavioral expositions where you could see things in people and really challenge and question and identify and help them bring awareness. And so having experienced Diesel Day felt so profoundly like home because I know those things so inherently well and I've experienced them so much. But I think what's cool about it is that to your point earlier, we were talking about is that like, everybody now they're putting together these crazy things, right? You got all these super, I don't even know what they call them anymore, super endurance type things. And there's heat and then there's rain, there's ice, there's all this stuff, there's all this stimulus, there's all these things, but none of those things, because there's so many things, is there the one thing, which seems to be behavior, right? Like you can't really identify the person in the middle of that because like if you're constantly after a bunch of things. And so having experienced Diesel Day, it's, I think I said it to you. I was like, it's kind of like the perfect drug. And you leave there and you attempt to try to find that drug again someplace else, and you enroll in a couple of other. For me, I've enrolled in a handful of different endurance events and stuff like that. But like they all seem to capture one piece of it, but not the other piece. And so what I think is very cool about Diesel Day is that, and I think I said this last time, it is a behavior event mass as a physical endeavor. And I think that through that lens, I think a lot of people see it and they look at it as like, I can't work out for, do something for so long or so hard or so arduously. But, the lessons that are learned through there, whether it just be the left hand or like the tears you shed at 3:00 in the morning on the back trail in the middle of the night, where you're like, was that a bear? I don't know what that was. Was that just me? I don't know what that sound is. But like, as you're trying to sing to yourself to stay happy and you're exploring those deep throws. But the thing that's important about that is that it wasn't the suffering. It was getting back to you and Nicole.
You used that word.
I know. Well, that was my point with using that word. It's like, it wasn't about like beating myself up or any of those things. It was that in the middle of it, all you had to do was get back to you. And if Tosh says I'm okay, I'm okay. Fuck, gotta go again, right? And like, and you just keep going, and there's just something about that I think is so profoundly valuable, and that's why we were so adamant that everybody needed to experience it, especially for the people we're responsible for with FitFilliate. But like, I'll fight to the death, making sure that everybody knows that something like that exists, because so many people are like, I could never. I'm like, you could, and you should, and you will, and you'll love it. and frankly, you'll come out the backside completely changed. You look back, and you said this to us, you're like, you'll probably look back and you won't even really think about the physicality of it. You're going to think about the behavioral or the emotional endeavor of the whole thing. And for me, when I look back, it feels like it was only like a couple of weeks ago, but it was September. Okay, but I look back and like, I can almost not feel any of the physical parts of it, but I can remember all the emotion. I can remember all of the victories, all of the defeats, all of those moments in there. But for me, that was what I got on that plane for, right? And I think I said this to you when I wrote it up, is that like I had to go to Diesel Day because I needed to see if the man that I thought that I was congruent with the man that I actually am. And there was only one way to know, and it was to get through that event. And so not getting on that plane wasn't an option for that exact reason. But then literally right up until it was time to go, right? Like to start the event was like, fuck, can I, it wasn't, I knew I was going to survive it, but I was like, what man is going to come out the back end of this? And it's such a fucking cool event. I'm pumped that you put it together. I'm obviously very proud that you put it together. Thanks. Having experienced it, I think it's cool, but there's so much to unpack in it. And I just want everybody to experience. It's probably the easiest way to unpack it.
Yeah. Let me dig in a few snapshot points that I just wrote down as you were talking. You didn't have defeats during Diesel Day. You had opportunities to have some self-awareness and opportunities to explore things that you probably didn't really consider, right? Opportunities for growth. I'm not just trying to reframe and with positive psychology. No. You never experienced a defeat at Diesel Day. No. Nobody to date has experienced a defeat at Diesel Day. They've experienced tremendous opportunities to increase self-awareness and provide opportunity for reflection. And that's something that you did wonderfully for months after your Diesel Day until I had to leave for the row. Your writing is beautiful. You're a very creative person. You're a phenomenal writer, and you're very in tune with wanting to explore yourself. And that's what Diesel Day does, right? Like, I'm not trying to break people's paradigms, right? I'm trying to expose their paradigms to them and say, hey, you know what? Have you ever really challenged or questioned this paradigm that you have? And where did it come from? We get inundated with signals, information, influence, all this messaging from all the world that, hey, this is what you should believe. And we're just sort of patterned. Are you even really living your own life? Are we just in some big simulation?
Lisa's gonna edit that one out.
Okay, we're supposed to act that way, and no. How about you actively question and challenge what you believe in, the paradigms that you've had created for you that you've just sort of decided to adopt, instead of really bringing it inside, chewing it up a little bit, and then finessing it. I don't want to break anybody's paradigm. Because people have their own paradigms for their own reasons. I want you to question and challenge those, because that's how you're going to then take control of your life, specifically your way of thinking. And then you're going to arm yourself for more happiness, more success, more efficiency, whatever it is. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's Diesel Day. And it excites me, helping people break these things for themselves. Like, I don't want anybody to think exactly the way I think. I want people to understand what I think, how I think it, why I think it, and then assimilate it inside so that it makes sense to them, and then twist it so that it makes the greatest sense and has the greatest fit for who that person is in their life.
Sure.
And then also understanding where you're at in your life today is very, very, very much different than where you were in your life 20 years ago, where you're going to be in your life in 5 years. Let's not just get complacent and happy with status quo, right? There's times to accept status quo with who we are. And then there's times to challenge that status quo to be more than who we are today. And that's the goal, right? To suck a little bit less every day than you did the day before.
Suck a little bit less.
Diesel Days. Yeah. We've never had anybody come back. I will say we're 100% on people coming back that I've been changed for the better for the rest of my life.
Yeah, literally. I think, not to throw it around lightly, but for sure that is 100% what comes out of it. And the friends and the bonds you make too, I think are worth it. I made some friends that weekend that, like, I don't doubt that, like, one, I could call them up enduring anything. and they would obviously be there. And maybe it's just because you bond through that moment, but I think you come out the backside of it as a changed person, reflective of and appreciative of those people and what they've been through themselves. And so the coolest part is probably, well, the whole thing is relatively cool, but that finishing part, when you have that emotional sort of outburst and that moment when you're just like, yeah, you know, and it's hard because I want to talk about so much of it, but at the same time, so much of the novelty of it is the personal experience of it. So to talk about it almost in some way makes me feel like I rob people of their own opportunity to experience in their own way. So it's definitely it's a thin line, so to speak, to walk with that one. But
What's neat too is you have a intimate connection with people that you've never met who have experienced a diesel day at a different event than yours. We've created this shared common experience that the collection of people that you did your diesel day with, you'll have this tremendous bond, whether you choose to engage with them for the rest of your life or not. Like, but you have this shared common experience that creates this bond, this affinity. And you have that with the group that went before you. You'll have that with another diesel day that goes after you. And inevitably you might come into contact with somebody that's done a diesel day, and you're immediately going to be able to empathize with so much. And then that sets the conditions for even greater meaning making, because you both had the same exact experience, although it was different, but it's the same.
For sure. And so I guess in all that, I'm very curious how you are going to boil all that down. And I mean, the hard way is obviously very different than diesel day. But I'm very excited for the principles and the trickle down, so to speak, of those principles and those opportunities that happen in diesel day to exist in something like the hard way, for people to have more access to.
Yeah, we're going to get that finished April 1st. We're going to release that.
Oh, that's right around the corner. I feel like
I know. Got a lot to do.
So you got your land legs back though. How long did that's what I need to know. How long did it take from when you guys got the boat back in to when you were like, okay, I could maybe run or jump right now?
Yeah, I think it was a good 3 days or so. You know, we were still in Antigua before we came back to Colorado.
Yeah.
That I felt my land legs, right, in terms of balance, stability, even my psychological land legs. You know, it took a few days. I wouldn't say I was completely recovered, although at the surface it was like, okay, hey, cool. After 3 days, we get back on a plane, we come back home. I'm recovered. But you know, that's not true. My perception of being recovered, you know, my physical capabilities were definitely diminished across so many different arenas outside of just rowing. And that took maybe, well, you know, to feel good and settled being back home, it took another week. Think I was physically repaired, you know, absent some strength after the first week, short week, no problem. I did do a workout because I had the Madness events going. So I did my 2 Madness workouts the last 2 days of January, and I didn't have to scale them, which was good. But I think that was a function of what the events were. And but I definitely could feel, you know, some physical things, right? The weakness, the coordination, the technique, lack of air, the perception of lack of air. And then something weird. I was still feeling a general physical fatigue, like a systemic fatigue. I think it was big adrenaline dump. All those things, and that took probably 2 or 3 weeks to really feel like, okay, hey, good, I'm doing well. Like my appetite was really, really big. I was sleeping tons of hours, even though I felt during my waking time that I was recovered. I think my body still had some catching up to do systemically from just fatigue, right? Psychological fatigue, physical fatigue. It's funny. Yesterday I just did the Madness workout, and it was supposed to be 10 rounds of 10 pull-ups and 10 ring dips. And of course, I go back out there, that ain't that bad. And I tried to do a pull-up, and I was like, whoa, I better warm up a little bit more. And then I tried to do a couple pull-ups to get ready, and I was like, whoa, I better do a little bit more warming up. And you know what? I'm going to scale this. And I ended up scaling it so much. And it pulled at my ego a little bit. right? Even though I believe in scaling, and I'm not ashamed to have to scale, and I understand, but I felt so deconditioned of doing pull-ups and ring dips. I ended up only doing 10 rounds of 5 and 5. And I woke up this morning and I feel absolutely wrecked, So,
Really?
but I'm excited. I'm not looking at it as a roadblock. I'm looking at it as an opportunity to start back at ground zero and rebuild the strength, but rebuild it in a better way, and I'm going to focus a lot more on technique as I rebuild my strength and not be in a race to get back the capacity that I had 2.5 years ago. And I have zero desire to get back the capacity I had 15 years ago either. I want to rebuild. It's a unique opportunity to rebuild from near ground with all of the experience and wisdom gained from the last 20-25 years. And it's like, hey, if you had an opportunity, we always feel these questions, right, when you're kind of hanging around. It's like, hey, if you could do it all over again, what would you do different? People ask these questions like that all the time. Well, I've got this unique opportunity to actually do it different, and spending some time thinking about what I want to do different and why I want to do it different.
That's perfect. What a great opportunity. I guess, most people don't really get that, right? You end up in this one long continual line of continuity. So you're no shortage you have no shortage of hard things that you have endeavored to do in your life, and definitely events. Where does this one rank in terms of the things that Tosh has done physically in your life, emotionally or mentally? Is the hardest one up there, the top 3? Where's it at?
Top 5. Oof. Yeah. That's definitely not number 1. It's probably like 3, 4, or 5. I'm still going to stick with the Arrowhead 135.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but
yeah. An experience at God Zone would have been one of those trips for an ultra adventure race.
Yeah.
But this is up there. This is definitely up there, and I've learned some things through the row. Learned some things about myself. Learned some things about my ideas about leadership. I've got a lot of questions that are hanging over, and it's taught me a lot of stuff, or taught me a handful of things that I haven't been exposed to an opportunity to learn those things, which I'm excited about. Right, I'm really looking forward to leveraging a lot of this rowing experience into the work at the Diesel Days in the hard way, but also for friends and family and relationships, and how I navigate relationships and how I show up in relationships.
I love that.
That's probably the biggest thing. I've said it. I believe it. How I show up in my relationships is the biggest takeaway for me from this row.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
It's interesting timing is somebody who feels like I'm processing that myself with personal relationships and the version of myself that I choose to show up as. I don't pretend to know that what a row across the ocean would mean for my ability to do that or process that, but I do know the powerful implication of the awareness of that. So I guess my only other question I have a lot of questions about the row, but I'll bug you about them personally. But as it applies to that thing, so one person, you guys are nonstop rowing the whole time, right? Like 2 people are constantly rowing. So while 2 people are like, sleeping, doing whatever, stuff like that. So it's obviously a very physical endeavor. Where does it rank in terms of physical versus emotional versus, mental? I guess they're kind of the same thing, or versus, just overall input on it. Where would you say that ranked? Is it mostly a physical endeavor, mostly a mental endeavor? Where at?
For me, it was categorically harder psychologically than it was physically. That is a function of maybe just adapting over time. Maybe that's a function of the intensity put into the physical over time. It's a function of the team dynamics and where everybody was collectively as individuals in the physical or psychological space. And for me, the greatest challenge of this row, which, I'll toot my own horn right now, was when I went into even 2.5 years, 3 years ago, when we said we were going to start, when I was actually going to do this row.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it, everybody's like, oh my God, that's so physical. And I'm like, yeah, nah, that's not going to be the hardest part of this row. It's going to be the psychological aspect. And so I knew that going in, or I had planned that was going to be the case going in. Had I been surrounded with 3 teammates that were significantly more developed in their capacity physically, maybe it would have been harder for me physically. But I also think that the psychological would have been at least near equals if that were the case too.
Sure.
But by far, psychologically, this was exceptionally challenging. Why? That's the question we want to ask. Why?
Yeah.
You're a captive audience. You're on a boat with 3 other individuals. You cannot escape. I can't just say, go to my bedroom and slam the door and sit there and pout
Yeah.
for 2 hours. I can't run to the refrigerator and crack open a case of PBR. I can't jump in the truck and drive down to town. I can't. Yeah, I just can't escape. Right. I
Right.
can't distract myself from it. You're in each other's face on a very, very small vessel. You're in it 100% for, in our case, 33 and a half days.
Does the boat get smaller or get bigger as you go out longer?
The boat stayed the same size, Tony. I don't know if you know
Literally,
or not.
I get it.
The boat did get smaller, but the space that you had to just insulate, for me specifically, was the stern cabin, got
Sure.
bigger psychologically. It became a much bigger safe space to just get a quick timeout. But
Yeah.
it was never a total escape because you still had obligations 24/7 in the event that something arose that needed extra attention. A bang on the hatch, we got to come out, and you have to be ready and willing to respond for the team above whatever you're trying to do for yourself. So it was never an escape hatch, so to speak, right? You always had to be on call. Yeah,
What a cool endeavor.
understanding how you have to navigate, motivate, lead yourself through your
Yeah.
highs and your lows, and how that influences or affects others on where
Sure.
they're at on their cycle of highs and lows. And 4 people's sine waves of highs and lows, sometimes 2 people would sync up and 2 people would be off sync. Sometimes all 3
Yeah.
or all 4 of us would be high. But it was never that we had the exact same, wavelength, amplitude, period, as each other. It was always changing. And just being able to be fluid and have the skill sets to actually respond with the greatest level of efficiency or efficacy during that fluid period was really challenging.
I can't even pretend to know what it was like. I can tell you that I was very upset when I had to delete the app off my phone, because it was definitely the highlight of my day, multiple times a day, to check the app and see where Tosh was and see where Chris was and be like, where are they at? It definitely filled a lot of downtime of my day to be like, all right, they're still moving. That was really fun. I think that was very cool. Then I became very enamored with other people, like the girl, what is her name, Miriam? She's so young. I'm like, what? But like, I don't even remember how many days it took her, but I was like, singularly across the ocean, but like, she's already like a physicist or some crazy thing like that already. And
She's
I was like,
phenomenal young lady. From the moment we met her on shore in Gamera, she had this energy, this beauty that, just communicated to you in so many ways. 23 years old when she departed.
Yeah.
Originally, she was supposed to row as a pair. Her teammate dropped out, so her boat was actually bigger than a soloist boat. It's a
really, I didn't know that.
2-person boat.
Wow.
She's 23 years old on her own, and she sets the world record for woman singles.
Yeah.
55 days or something like that. She just finished maybe like a week and a half ago. An incredible human being, just beautiful. The way she thinks, what she thinks, why she's doing it. And we got pretty close. Nah, we didn't get pretty close. Like, I mean, we started a really good relationship, our team with her, as we saw her around Gamera for the 2 weeks while we were on the row. And while we were on the row, we were always like pinging Angus, our campaign manager, like, hey, how's this team doing? How's this person doing? Because you just create a bond with different teams,
How does it work when you're single? You just put down the tide anchor and just sleep? Is that how that works? Because I mean, obviously not, somebody's not rowing the whole time. I don't know how that works. I just thought about that just now. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I did wonder about that as well.
It just depends on conditions. Sometimes you just float because the environmentals are favorable, and you can kind of go to half asleep and You're
I was going to say,
making headway.
I don't think I could relax and sleep when I'm just like, what's happening? Where am I going?
Yeah.
It's just floating. I don't, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you put out your sea anchor. Sometimes you put out
Yeah.
your drogue, just depending on the conditions, and your comfort, right? And that not comfort because you're just chasing comfort, but like there's some value in prioritizing
Yeah.
comfort over whatever, as long as it's consistently supporting your goal statement, right? And understanding that it's going to ebb and flow. And it'd be really cool to just give her a ring and just talk to her about her experience. I'm looking forward to some of the podcasts that she's going to do, because inevitably she's going to get on. Not that the FitFilliate podcast isn't a great podcast, but like she's going to have.
I get it.
She's probably going to be on Rogan, right? Like I would be
Yeah.
surprised if she wasn't on Rogan, and and she deserves to be.
She deserves to be. I mean, respectfully, I mean, all of you guys, honestly, that endeavor, regardless of how many people are in the boat, is deserves the credit. And I think that, the CrossFit community certainly obviously took notice. That was very cool to me to watch. I mean, obviously you guys are not small characters in the community, particularly, especially you. And so it wasn't a real big surprise to see a handful of people tune in, but the sheer number of people who were, it was like, I guess maybe it's to them, it's like seeing one of their own out to sea. I don't really know what it was, but it was very cool to watch just how much support and how much attention that thing got. And I know that was really what this was about for you, was to bring attention and awareness, to the Big Fish Foundation. And I guess, how do you feel about your results in terms of your ability to do that with this row? Was it worth it? Did it measure up to what you expected? Are you going back out? You're not going back out, but.
I'm very, very happy. The outreach from just across the community, let alone other communities that I have kind of connection with, but was an incredible. I had just got into Facebook yesterday and was scrolling through stuff. And it's like, man, I got thousands and thousands of people that I've either lost touch with, contact with, are complete strangers, and everything in between, right? Reaching out, saying, watched you, it was motivating, inspiring. And ultimately it wasn't for me for personal attention. I mean, there is a piece of it, right? That's why I would sign up to do something like this. I'm not going to deny that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But a larger function of it was to create awareness for the Big Fish Foundation, to help support the work that we're doing and the growth that we're experiencing, and in our endeavor to impact against catastrophic decision making and suicide amongst veterans, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was fun for me, at least on social media, you would scroll through like the popular feed, and it was completely outside of like the cross. You would see people sharing and posting, about you guys in the boat. And I was like, it had transcended so many circles. So, I mean, I was obviously very proud of you guys and the work that you did in completing the endeavor. Not that I doubted that you would complete it. That was never the issue. It was just like, how long is this going to take them? How long are they really going to be out there? Are they really, all jokes aside, your joke about, only going to take 28 days worth of food. I guess my last question, that one, is how do you feel about your performance in the event?
As an individual, I feel really good about my performance. Very good. Very happy. Also surprised that I didn't struggle more than I did. And that's not coming from an ego place. I did struggle at certain things, just not to the degree that I expected. That might be a testament to where I'm at in my headspace and how I've developed over the years, how I trained specifically for this row. It's a testament to the strength of my teammates who were there with me to help me through, right? A testament to probably a handful of other things. But I'm allowed to be proud of that for sure as an individual.
I would say
I'm proud of how the team did to a degree. I think we could have done better. I think we should have done better. But not taking away from how well we did, right? And I am disappointed. There's one or two moments, I go back and forth. Is it one or two moments that I'm kind of disappointed in myself? One for sure. I'm disappointed in myself, how I showed up and how I responded, to temporary moment of weakness. I'm proud that I recognized that moment of weakness as soon as I did, instead of it being much, much longer. I'm proud that I even have an opportunity to be aware of that. I'm grateful for my teammates to have received me during those moments the way that they did. But yeah, ultimately I have an itch that is unscratched, and I'm frustrated. I still harbor a little bit of anger. And that's okay too, because it's under it. I've processed it and understood it instead of it just being just a raw emotion or feeling, right? And I'm processing that in a very healthy and constructive way in order to support me in my personal growth process and how
Mhm.
now can empathize with other people in a different way as they're going through their struggles. So a supremely successful event, although there is a small margin of disappointment, frustration, um, and I'm still gonna say maybe it's not whatever is right butted up against the word anger. That's just a little bit less than anger. I have that.
Mm. Well,
Still.
disdain, maybe not quite anger, just a little bit of,
Hmm.
bit of
Definitely
little
stronger
twinge in
than
there.
definitely stronger than chafe,
Mm.
but not anger. It's whatever's in
I
between
mean,
those two.
depends
I
on
might
your
have to
level of
get
chafe.
into
Some of those
Yeah.
chafes are
yeah,
pretty aggravating.
yeah. I have
I
to get
did,
into Webster's and find the right word.
I did think
Fair
about
enough.
it when you guys had that equipment issue on the boat, which kind of led you to slow up quite a bit. I thought they're going to go back and do this again one day for sure. Now, like
I
this is
think
happening.
everybody
As
thought
soon,
that. Everybody's like,
yeah,
well,
as soon as it
load
came
it
out,
up
well,
again.
Well, I want to
buckle
talk
up,
about
kids.
this equipment issue real quick because this is something that I made a promise to myself that I was going to do is I was going to make sure that I kept the record clean and correct around this instead of letting people coax us into thinking that it was a bigger issue and problem than it was to allow us not to achieve our dreams or our goals or ambitions, right?
Sure.
We had equipment issues, but I will refuse to ever let in my presence or my awareness anybody on our team and the rest of the world at large to use that as an excuse or a reason why we didn't perform better or a reason why I have the shape that I do.
Hmm.
Our auto tiller popped off in tremendous weather in waves, 30 plus footers.
Fuck that.
Our auto tiller was stressed. Our auto tiller was taxed and stressed beyond its design. And we were putting it really to the test and it performed absolutely wonderful. The fact that it failed us is not an indictment against the auto tiller or that company, the Evo. It's actually a testament that it performed so well when it was stressed at the levels that it was stressed. And I think there's actually a corollary that we should be, and that I am definitely doing as we give ourselves grace when we're being stressed and we might not perform. Like it's not an indictment, right? It's
No.
you got to give yourself grace. It's consistent with my thoughts on personal grace giving. But it did cost us some time. 4 days of but not the whole 4 days, right? Like I look at it, our auto issues. Okay, so it popped off one time, and then the second time that same night, and it caused problem the rest of the night about
No.
8 hours, right? We lost some distance. Yes. Did we lose distance that should have taken us out of first place? No. Did it affect individuals on the boat psychologically? Yes. And each individual, it affected them to greater or lesser degrees, and proportionate and disproportionate degrees for each of us, right? And then it failed again the next night, and then it failed again the third night, and then again the fourth night. So 4 nights in a row, we're having auto tiller on our mind. Now it does drain a little bit of resources. It did make us a little bit slower. We lost some speed, we lost some distance, but it is definitely not something that you can point at and say, this is a reason why. Because to do that would to trick you into not taking the personal responsibility that you should be taking, right? Or us as individuals and team, right? Because it unduly affected certain individuals more than it should have. It unduly affected things that it shouldn't have affected us to the degree that we allowed it to as an escape from, pushing harder or sticking to our goals or whatever.
Yeah.
I think there's another really, really cool parallel with that and about taking ownership and personal responsibility. And it's very consistent with my left hand. Every time you point the finger, you need to flip it over, right? It's very important to make sure we understand that. And then we had a battery issue. And yes, there are some things. The boat was wired incorrectly when we shipped it back to the UK, when we had the lithium batteries installed and another piece of equipment installed. And that was a very real thing that happened, that I don't believe any of us should have taken responsibility or ownership on, because we've did everything within our means prior to even getting in to the ocean to make sure that all of our equipment was snuff, all of our checks and stuff. So I will not accept that responsibility for the boat being wired wrong, or us not finding out that it was wired wrong, because we were doing the diligence there.
Sure.
The battery issue, though, also same conversation as we had with the auto tiller, right? We're not going to point fingers and blame the battery. It was a challenge that we had to overcome. It presented an obstacle. It did drain psychological resources from us. It kind of tried to coax us into being less and trying to let ourselves down, for sure. And we should all take individual and team ownership of how that affected each of us differently and as a team. But the battery issue, like to make it clear, we had one battery totally fault. And so instead of running the boat off of 2 batteries, we worked the boat off of 1 battery. We found a viable solution to managing that. And we also made many, many attempts to find the problem, to re-navigate it so that we didn't have to manage, but it ended up becoming something that we had to manage for the rest of our crossing. Over 16 days of our crossing, we had to manage this battery issue, function of having the right amount of power to support essential systems, water maker being the number one. It affected our ability to make water, but we still had ample amount of water. There was a moment when we thought we lost both batteries. And but that was very, very short-lived, because we were able to fix it. So we take credit for the resourcefulness to fix it and get through it. We take credit for how we managed all that. But we should also take the opposite of credit for letting it affect us more than it should have. But our battery, and to put this into a bigger context, the team that won the race, Ocean Cats, the Spanish team, they had total power failure. 3 days before we lost our auto tiller, they had total power failure, to the point that they thought they were going to have to get rescued and were out of the race completely. And they lost a lot of distance. They probably lost more distance from their total power failure than we did between our auto tiller and our battery issues combined.
Really?
They did not allow that to affect them psychologically. They used it as a tool to then say, hey, we need to dig in even harder than we thought we were capable of doing. And then they did it, and they came back and they won the race. Right? So
they were cruising at the end.
Yeah. If you look at our 2 teams, and if we're going to start using our battery and auto tillers excuses and well, you just become a douchebag and totally hollow of any integrity, because you have another team that experienced something and they rose to the occasion and they succeeded. And I'm so excited. I've been back in touch with those guys, and I might fly to Barcelona and just spend a couple of days with them and just talk to them and learn from that whole thing and what they did, because I think it's an incredible opportunity to increase self-ownership, right?
Well, when you go, let me know, because it's one of my favorite cities. I'll bring my land legs along with you. We can go eat some tapas out there.
There you go.
But I think there's so much to that, particularly in the context of, like, ideally the audience that will listen to this is affiliate owners. It would be so easy to obviously point the finger, right, and be like, this is the reason, and sort of almost abdicate that responsibility to that, or at least, use it as an excuse or a crutch, and look at it. But like the profound level of not only responsibility, but just growth that comes out of respecting the variables as a part of the story and seeing how you guys overcame it. And really the honesty to be able to look at another team. Most people just would not have done what you did with Ocean Cats, being like, they had the same thing, but worse. And then they accepted it. Like we took our fate. And I think a lot of people obviously embrace situations like this in everyday life, right? But I don't think they have that same level of the left hand, right, where they point that finger back to them. Do you think?
You want to know what's funny, Tony? I'm going to interrupt real quick. And it's not a plug for Diesel Day, but I had a very awesome exchange with a participant at Diesel Day 2 years ago, after they're reflecting for the next couple months, much like you did, around this very thing that has afforded me to grow the way I think in it. And it worked between me and another participant at one of my, because of the exchange that Be more wants, be more proud of respond to a situation than you are the actual situation. When so it's pulls and others away from saying, yeah, you were a little bitch, right? And be more impressed with individuals' responses to situations than you are the specifics of a situation. And I've spun that in my head over and over for a lot of time to package that and onboard it as a better understanding of something that I've believed in, but just didn't have the right way of articulating it. An example on the opposite side of this same thing we're talking about, we broke the All-American team record by like what, 14 days, 13 days. I don't know. And it's like, oh my God, you guys you crushed it. You shattered this, a record, world record for a team of All-Americans, right? Hey, yeah, that's cool. Now I have a choice. I can then latch on to that in order to influence my ability for self-reflection, self-assessment, and forget about all this other stuff that I should be taking credit for, right? For not achieving goal to win the fucking race, right? And so now what we'll do is we'll use, but you don't worry, Tosh, you still amazing. You still set the All-American. Yeah, hey, cute consolation prize. and it's good, but it is a consolation prize because that was never in our goal set. Right. It's a much lesser degree of challenge because first place would have been 31 days. Well, we finished in 33 and a half days. We didn't. There's good reasons for better understanding, reflection, and it's okay. It's really, really fine. But let's not trick ourselves into walking around with bigger puffed up chests because we set some
record
were so much lower. In your efforts just or 100% nonstop, you can be happy with losing it, right? But if you end up not even going to the College World Series championships and you end up going on the T-ball field and win the Little League World Series, you don't get to say, oh, I won the Little League World Series. Well, you know what? No, you said you wanted to win the College World Series. And so now you want to just have everybody forget that. You yourself forget that so that you don't have to deal, manage, and grow from your opportunities from growth and where you didn't perform or where you let yourself down or you let others down. So we're going to use the fact that we won the Little League World Series to let me forget all of that and then continue to walk around in this cloud of like bullshit, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, hey, cute, like consolation prize, proud of it. Fine. It's a good new standard for future All-American teams now to chase. And that is really, really cool. Right. But I'm not going to walk around there now with like some cute little badge on my chest and advertise. I'm not going to go make a t-shirt, All-American world record holder. Like, nah, that's it. It's not, that is the beginning of a very slippery slope in an exact example of the concept of the paradigms that I'm trying to have people question and challenge in their head about how they conduct themselves through life, you know.
For sure.
Anyways, I just little freaking rant there.
It's all right.
Still,
we're
now
here for
now
ranting.
you know the chafe. Now you know the chafe.
We got no structure here, so we're here to rant. But yeah, the moving of the goalpost thing is fascinating, and it is insidious. It does exist, you know, pretty much not only inherently in you if you let it, but obviously like society will then throw it on you as well, right? You get so many people who are just like, you're so hard on yourself, like maybe you should just. And you know, there's probably a fine line, I suppose, when you do have to remain optimistic, positive, et cetera, and you know, do appreciate your endeavors. But it is for sure one of those things where it's a big topic of frustration. People are like, yeah, well, I mean, but you did all of this. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't do what I set out to do, and that's not okay with me. You know, and
you know what's funny? You know where my head's going?
Yeah.
You know where my head's going right now? This is why I'm a dork. Consolation prize. What's the root origin something put your spelling bee something hat on in the word console, to console somebody, right? I submit that consolation prizes were designed in order to console people that didn't perform to the degree that they hope they do. And there's nothing wrong with consoling somebody, right? And there's nothing wrong with consolation prizes, but you have to keep the purpose and the meaning of those things true and honest, just the same way that we reserve the words suffer versus exceptionally challenging, right? Or whatever the case may be. Or we've talked about how I don't use the word love except for when I mean love, right? And so consolation prizes to console somebody, something. And it's really, when you start to understand and appreciate this concept, you'll find that your life, because how many times we like, hey, you didn't win, right? Hey, and it's okay. You don't have to go into some massive state of depression. Like let's use that as an informing opportunity to be better. Better at what? Better performance, maybe. How about better the way that we receive ourselves, and to be better in how we can give ourselves grace, so that then we can be better informed on how to give other people grace.
Yeah, I think there's a new fascination. Maybe Michael Easter is potentially responsible for it with the comfort crisis, but like the whole idea of the misogi and all these things that people are now after in doing these difficult things, which I think is fantastic, because the personal exploration that comes out of whatever that hard thing is for you. Hard is relative to anybody that does it, but there's one powerful part of the old principles of it. Obviously there's the first one, which is like don't die. That's a given, or like 50% chance of success. But the one part of it I think is very profound and important is that it should be a relatively private endeavor, right? And I think that there's something so overlooked and forgotten about things like that, because there's a lot of people who do sign up to do hard things, and maybe they do it because they want consolation prizes, they want recognition, or they want their t-shirt or their prize. But this willingness to go do hard things for the sole purpose of your own pursuit and your own development, I think is a very overlooked and missing thing. And maybe it is rooted in this whole consolation thing, but like maybe it's just a social media insidious thing where it's like, I can't go do something if I don't post about doing this thing. But like for me personally, very few people know that I did any of that, or have done any of the stuff that I've done post that, because it's really just been about like, I'm doing these things for me. And if I start to share them, it's a lot like for me with photography. If I start sharing it, then it's about for you, not for me. And so photography was always my own pursuit. Same with like these personal endeavors. But I'd love your input on that one as well, in terms of just the personal exploration. I'm not saying that like I want them to share it because I want you to get the publicity of Diesel Day, of course, more people do it. But I think that there's something very profound about that personal pursuit, because at that point there is no consolation, because then you have no choice but to accept that like I didn't do what I set out to do, and nobody's going to tell me about I mean, you could probably move your own goalposts, and people I'm sure do. But I
think I agree 100% with what you're saying, and it is also okay for somebody that pursues photography, to use your example, for professional reasons and not personal reasons. And if they choose to post or advertise for those reasons, that's also okay. Where it becomes not okay is when we manage or manipulate perception that we're doing one thing for something and we don't have, and likely sometimes it's coming from a personal lack of self-awareness, that we're actually doing it for this reason, but we're doing it for that reason. The case would be these self-promoters, right? But then they try to tell everybody that I'm not self-promoting, I'm not doing it for that, I'm doing it, well, you will have some incongruence that you need to reconcile, because self-promotion's okay, right? I choose not to, or I do self-promote, but I do it with certain boundaries and rules that I stick to, because they're consistent with my values. Somebody else with different values, different aims, different purposes, and there should be no judgment. Same thing with this misogy thing. It's like, hey, that's what these day is, right? But it's not a misogy for the purpose of comparison. That's what competition's for. Diesel days are not competitions. Diesel days are events for you to get out of it what you want, what you need, what you think you need, versus what the universe wants to give you. Right? It's not a competition. We do keep score. We keep score because it's a motivational tool. It's an external motivator, and I'm using that. But really, your score is for you. It's your ruler, and it's graduated in certain degrees of increments, and then somebody else has a ruler, and it's graduated in different degrees of increments. And the only thing that matters isn't how big each other's rulers are. or what number you got on your
Right.
rulers as you compare across rulers. It's how close are you getting to your threshold, and how close is this person? This person might have a threshold at number 100, and they do an
Yeah.
event and they only get to 50, right? Where
Yeah.
Tony might have a ruler that goes to 75 and he gets to 65. I would say the difference of 50, the delta of 50 in person A's and Tony's delta of 5 or 15 or whatever the number was that I threw out there.
Yeah.
I would say that Tony actually, if we want to be comparing, Tony did better, right?
Sure.
Measuring individuals
You can say
for
that
the sake
again
of
if you
giving
want.
them
It's over.
feedback. Yeah. Measuring people against themselves and not against others, right? Measuring people against themselves, and not measuring for the sake of pointing a finger and judging, measuring for the opportunity to give awareness and create opportunities for growth. You know, and it's not to bash the competitions either, because competitions are
No.
essential, right? And
Yeah.
but we're choosing a competition because we want to measure across a universal ruler to be able
Right.
to crown or to be able to whatever a recognized achievement, right? And we standardize competitions for that reason. That's why Diesel Day isn't standardized in regards to performance and numbers. It's standardized in terms of creating a consistent experience, a consistent environment to explore. But we're not looking for a universal ruler for the sake of comparison to crown, right? That's not
Sure.
there is a reason why we do have numbers and we do keep scores, because there is a useful tool in comparison that we want to capture, but we want to capture the healthy part of comparison for the sake of motivating, inspiring, exciting, and finding an external driver, right, for you to grab onto to help you achieve your goals, right? And that's Diesel Day.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And I guess to your caveat too, I don't want to take away from anybody who does do things for the simple sake of, getting the recognition. Like if that's your thing, Bob's your uncle, whatever you want to call it, like I'm okay with it. Go do your own thing. I for the purpose of personal exploration and personal development, I would definitely ask you some uncomfortable questions as to, why you need to do that and for what purpose you're pursuing there. But yeah, I mean, the curated experience is it's really the only word that I can think of that exists inside the Diesel Day experience is precisely that. It touches on so many different things, but it's an interestingly perfect storm of monumental events. And like, to the book, The Power of Moments, and like there's so many core memories and so many core moments that exist inside that 24-hour window. It is powerful. It's one of those things that if there was a way to microdose it, and potentially that is, through what's coming next, then so be it, because it is a very, very cool opportunity.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I wasn't not listening to you. I was writing down this book that you just referenced, The Power of Moments. It's got my curiosity, because if Tony
great book.
You also a phenomenal reader too. You have an appetite for literature, and I know when you throw a book name out that it's not thrown out lightly.
Mass consumption. But one thing that I did want to say about, not so much mass consumption, but about those moments and the lack of competitive drive, or the lack of competitive atmosphere. It's funny how in the middle of Diesel Day, or whatever, 7, 8, 10, everybody's individual in it. You almost wish that there was a competitive element to it, because it would give you something to distract yourself from, right? It would be, for me at least, I don't know if it's for everybody, but it was like I almost wanted something to compete against, so that I had something that I could point that finger at and be like, it's this thing's fault. I'm doing what I thought I would do or otherwise. And then you make peace with the fact that it's just you out there, right? And you have to work through that. And that to me was, it's like when you go into a flow tank, a sensory deprivation tank, and you're stripped of all the things that and you don't realize just how much you're bringing in stimulus all the time until you're all of a sudden absent of it. And you're like, this hurts to lay here. And you're like, oh, I'm squeezing. And it's kind of the same thing there. For me, it was almost a healing approach to appreciate just the physical capability of the human body, absent of the competitive intensive drive that I have. But like, there was just something about, being stripped of that wanting to compete thing and being like, it's just me. It's literally just my score. It's my output. It's my effort. It's my awareness. And that part was very cool for me personally. I'm not sure if everybody else feels the same.
You want to know what's crazy? I was competitively motivating you. I was trying to.
No, I know.
And I was creating different, and same thing for everybody, right? It's a part of me feeling you out for you. This experience is for you. It's not for me to deliver my bullshit. Right. So I take it that's why we cap it at so many people, because it's my ability to really try to read and analyze somebody. And I was trying to motivate you through competitive tactics in different degrees. And you didn't receive that signal. And I was aware that you weren't receiving that signal. So I knew that maybe you're not wired that way. And so then I would try to canvas other different signals and other different signals so that I could create the event unique for you on the base with the way that you received them. And it didn't mean that once I realized that you weren't going to be competitively motivated, it didn't mean that I stopped trying to at different times during the event. And it didn't mean that other people that weren't at the event with you didn't not receive it, because I was able to tweak them and tune them and get them to do things because they latched onto the competitive stimulus. And so that's where it's art, you know?
Yeah. That's why I think
I'm able to do that.
For me, I was like, maybe it's relative, because really what ended up happening was I had to reconcile a perception of myself from the real version of myself. Right. And where I was like, I've always thought that I was competitive and I was, competitively motivated. And I think people like to tell themselves they're competitive, but like, for me, that wasn't the case. And it took an environment and endeavor like that to be like, that was the first time that there was honesty for me to be like, this has never been about competition. I'm not even extrinsically motivated that way, apparently, at all. But like, you wanted something to focus on. And then I was like, no, that's not. For me, it's 100% intrinsic, just left foot, right foot, like just keep moving. And it didn't really matter. And it was a very real moment in that journey for me.
Well, here, I'm going to attack you now. And that's why you have so much room to grow, because you should have something that latches on. You should not be 100% either or. I'm not saying you need to be balanced, but you have to have some capacity to be and leverage the benefits of competitive motivation or these other external things, right?
Yeah.
This is why I love CrossFit so much. And I know it was not Greg's design, because Greg doesn't think this way, but the Hopper model, he who is fittest, who has the best capacity at any and everything that could come out of the peanut machine, right? It's like, hey, there's something in that peanut machine that you really, really want to come out. And then there's something in that peanut machine that you really, really don't want to come out. And you have the greatest to gain in development if the thing that you don't want coming out comes out, right?
For sure.
There's so many psychological things that are involved, like self-bias, self-selection, capacity, things that you think that you're good at. There's so many things. And so what I'm saying is Tony needs to be not 100% intrinsically or internally motivated. He should retain a degree of capacity there, but he will be fitter if he develops an appreciation, a respect, and an ability to resource some of the positive benefits as they relate to Tony, being positive for Tony through external motivation, right? He was fittest that has capacity at any and everything. And I've taken that Hopper model. It meant so much to me in the physical world for physical training. It resonates, but I get really, really dark. I've got goosebumps right now, because where CrossFit really just like, I'm so enamored with it, is because all of these models that Greg built, right? They can be used for psychological development, personal development, like all these other things. In fact, I find greater pleasure using those models in those domains. And that's what I do with the dealer, right? Like canvassing people, like, okay, hey, this person's not responding competitively. Well, how can I find another external motivator so that I can introduce an opportunity for him to gain capacity at that? And then she isn't motivated that way. She's motivated. Well, how can I continue to stimulate her with these things in order to create an awareness that there is benefit to being motivated that way, if I know how to process it in a healthy way and not, challenge, right? Like my stuff. And so, and I'm not saying balance, right? But I'm saying having capacity at both ends of the spectrum and all things in between. And whether it's 80%, 2%, 6%, 2%, I don't know what the recipe is for Tony, right? I
Yeah.
just know that a good solid recipe contains some of all of it.
Yeah, maybe my external motivation was don't be the first one that dies doing this workout or doing this event. It's funny. You've actually cut out a handful of times throughout this podcast because internet being internet. I thought it was my internet at first, but like it's funny because the tail ends of the things when you do come back, it's almost as if you didn't cut out at all because you can actually pick up the conversation. But I think a lot of that just has to do with the context of what we talk about in terms of behavior and physical movement and that sort of learning. So you can almost miss I guess my point is you can miss a chunk of it and then still catch up the back end of it and still really get it. I just think Diesel Day is such a great event. I personally, it literally truly changed my life. I know that everybody that goes through it experiences that, but that should not obviously downplay what it is. And I really hope that so many more people, and I do know that so many more people will get through it. They will experience it. For me personally, obviously, the point of dragging everybody from FitFilliate into it is that the lessons learned there just have so many parallels to what they're trying to achieve and accomplish in the affiliate model too. And it's just, I'm very excited for them to get through it. Obviously, I'm very excited to come hang out with you guys as well. But it'll just be so much more fun to do it, to just experience it again and see everybody else's. And so I think it's very cool that you've had so many people go through it, and I would just be so fun to sort through all of those individual personal experiences. I think that's a really cool opportunity you've got.
Mm-hmm. It's not going to be more fun. It's going to be a different kind of fun.
Different fun.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you guys this question, and maybe it's rhetorical of just me, but then feedback from your audience or yourselves. I've been entertaining because I just ultimately say through the website and Instagram, like, hey, I just need you to push the I believe button and trust and just come out here. You can do it. And I get some good traction from saying that and getting people to just do it when they have the self-doubt. And then I started thinking about it with the self-doubt that I have in my areas of self-doubt and how other people say, hey, don't worry about it, just do it. And it's like, I know you're right rationally, but still I struggle with it. So I'm getting ready. I'm entertaining doing a pre-Diesel Day one. And it basically what it is it's something that's because the thought of doing a 24-hour physical event nonstop is intimidating. I know you can do it. And I'm not saying I know you, Tony. I know everybody that's listening can do it. I've had all walks accomplish it. But I'm entertaining maybe doing a Diesel Day that's not quite like that. That is like, hey, there's going to be a 6 hours of something, and then there'll be a 2-hour reset with some learning and some engagement there so that you're getting the material delivered during the rest period, quote unquote, and then another 4 hours, and then another 1 hour break, and then another 7 hours, and then another 30-minute break, or whatever that flow would be as a step. I understand coming to a Diesel Day is a giant step. It's like trying to do a 40-inch box jump for a lot of people. And maybe I want to introduce a 20-inch box jump now without losing the power of you just actually taking that leap of faith, because there's a tremendous amount of growth that occurs when people take a leap of faith. But I also know that a 20-inch box jump is still a significant leap of faith for many people.
For sure.
So I'm thinking about doing that. And then I'm also thinking about opening up a specific course for parents and children, right? So you would come with your son or daughter to the event who is underage, because I don't let people come unless they're 18 years old. I don't know why 18 years is the number, insurance purposes, legal purposes, maybe. But I'm exploring opening up so like mom and son can come, and the son is 13 years old. That's where I'm really passionate in my leadership, is with that audience of like 12-year-old to 17 or 18-year-old, these very, very formable stages in their lives to influence and get on a preventative medicine type of process, instead of trying to, correct or change or solve or enlighten already developed processes. And if we
Yeah.
can catch a younger audience at an early stage in their development, imagine the amount of, there's so many problems in the world today with bullying, right?
Mhm.
Peer pressure, and it's having this really cataclysmic effect on our nation's youth, and
Sure.
how they end up showing up when they thrown into the real world, right? The big world that gives no fucks about them. And if we
Right.
can develop some skills through the way I think at that age, I think there's something valuable there. I don't know. It's stuff that I've been bouncing back and forth with different people, and I'm kind of just including you and your community in that conversation. And ultimately I'm trying to run a business, so I can't do a diesel day for just 2 people. It's
For
not
sure.
sustainable. I've done it because I cared so much, and it was like, hey, I just don't want to cancel this one, and I'll suck the loss. But
Yeah.
it's not a sustainable business model, and I
Yeah.
have to
No.
be sustainable if I want to continue to add value to the world. Because if it's not
Yeah.
sustainable, then I can't add value, and then I lose the ability to influence more and more and more and more.
I think the exploration that would come out of it for both groups of that. I mean, to the first group, to the, I guess we call it the interval version of Diesel Day, there's faith and familiarity, right? And so I think that if there's a way to help people see an opportunity that they would have otherwise dismissed as just completely off of the plate, off of the radar, having done it myself, I think there's a lot of power in the willingness to take that big step. That part of it is so much of the journey that I would challenge you on whether or not you could do that. But I have no doubt that the delivery of the rest of the content will still equally deliver on those things. And if it gets more people in there, I think that ultimately that's the most important thing, right? Like, I mean, respectfully, we know that Diesel Day in itself, in my opinion, not so humbly, is perfect. That's fine. You're not tearing that apart. And I think that part is absolutely important. And like, if it gets more people in the door, however that does that, I think that's important, because not only for the people who get to experience it, but obviously what you're trying to accomplish, but the parent side one, man,
huge.
is that one powerful. That one will be huge. That would be very cool. For the exact reason you're saying, I wonder what it's like to grow up today. It feels so different than it did. And maybe that's just how I know that I'm old, because I'm like kids these days, but there's just so much value in being able to explore something like that. Would be very, very impactful, especially with someone like you in their corner. Having somebody be able to believe in them. For a lot of people, I think that's really a big part of Diesel Day, is that, we've said it a lot of times around here on the podcast, and we've talked about before, but like, we believe coaching is just a transfer of belief, right? And so I think some people get that, some people don't, but when you've really truly been coached, it becomes very obvious. And so I think a lot of people, when they go through Diesel Day, and one of the most impactful things, I've talked to everybody else, is just the way you guys run support, right? And it's not so much because like you're just bringing us stuff and doing things, but it's like you believe in us. And for a lot of people, I think that might be one of the first few times that like somebody else has believed in them, and you're just like, fuck it, okay, I'm going to keep moving. And that's one of the reasons I know for a fact why so many people have survived it. But as it applies to the youth version of it, I know that will be one of the first times, if not the definite first time, that they've had somebody like yourself believe in them, and that'll change their whole life.
I appreciate those thoughts. I'm going to rewind on 2 things though now. A little bit of a lens inside the consistency piece and the tracking, right? Shifting hats back to the Big Fish Foundation and the nonprofit veteran work I do. We bring a bunch of veterans in to have these experiences to help inform them to make positive change in the way that they think and behave, right? And I'm realizing now, through the help of other people in conversations, right? Like, well, why don't we start making events, not all of them, some events for a veteran and their spouse, so that both can grow together in the support structure, right? Because here's the thing: a veteran comes in, they have a great, wonderful experience, and it has some stickiness, and they go back, and now they're back in their environment, and the people in their environment that are the support structures in everyday life, they haven't been tuned with this as an individual, or they haven't been tuned together with their partner. And so if we want to have even greater efficacy, creating some events where a veteran and a spouse attends together, right? And an analogy would be, give me a dog. There's the pack of wild running around the neighborhood, right? Because Chile, and that's what they have. They have these little freaking mad groups of dogs running around, right? And you snatch one up and you bring it into your household and you spend time training it in a loving, nurturing
Put it
way,
back in the pack.
and then you put it back in the pack. Well, it's going to revert back to pack mentality, unless it's a uniquely strong and exceptional individual, or it had such an impactful experience that it's created some sort of organic change inside the creature, right? Same thing with a veteran and a spouse. Put the veteran through an event, put it back in the environment, it will revert because it is being influenced by so many more signals and noises. And those signals and noises are either indifferent, ignorant, antagonistic, or just unaware of needing to change to support that individual. Same thing with the parent-child. Right? Let's bring a parent in and introduce them and influence them in a great way. Let's bring their child in, an individual, influence that individual in a unique way, but let's also do it together, the linkage.
Right.
And so then when both go back as individuals, they still have that link. Now they have something to help create balance in an environment still with all these other signals and noises. So that's just a little link of consistency in how I'm trying to work forward. And then the other one that I was going to rewind back is, how I'm going to externally motivate people to do the diesel day one instead of what you call the interval one. I'll just charge twice as much for the interval one, and then it'll be more enticing to take the leap of faith, right? Like it's just knowing how to
there you go.
People. So
we'll just charge
an inordinate amount of money for the interval one in order to say, well, doing the other one, and it's actually
pay for comfort.
I'm helping you. I'm helping you do the right thing. It might work for some people. It might turn off some people, but there's something there. A little truth in every joke. A little truth in every joke. There's something there.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I think you're spot on with that one. Change your environment, change your outcome, right? And I think as somebody who comes back from diesel day, that was for sure a central frustration, because you try to tell people about it. You try to put it into words. You try to explain it, and you're just like, that's one of the reasons why I had to write that whole thing out. Is just because I was like, I have to get this out of my brain. So it was cathartic to me to just write about it. And I've wrote about it several times actually since then additionally, but like you try to communicate to people and they're just like, no, I get it. Like you did a really hard thing for 20. I'm like, no, that's not even yes, but no. And then you're just like, you know what? Yeah, I give up. So that's why Matt and I'm like, hey, I talk about diesel. He's like, yes. And so it's one of those, and you warned us too, right? You were like, you're going to leave and you're going to have a hard time talking about this. And you're like, no, you get it. And you get back and you're like, no one understands.
But the interesting thing is, like from the outside, when you and both Matt came back, like I could notice a tangible change within you about, the way you spoke and what you referenced and where your thoughts were going. But not having been through it, like I still couldn't understand. And even now today, like you and Matt all reference something and you're like, no, like nothing, no context wrapped around it because I haven't done it. But I could see the change, but didn't understand what led to that change within you, or, the way that you are now speaking or thinking about things, or your perspective had changed. So I think, having that opportunity for people to do that together, where it's great to have the FitFilliate clients and, some of the coaches doing that, is going to create that common bond and that shared understanding then.
We have what I'm excited about too is I think there's like 3 husbands and wives doing it this time. So like we do get to change like the whole household. That'll be fun to kind of see. Well, listen, we've spent a lot of time. Obviously, I'm going to drag you back on again in the future. I know you've got Hard Way is going to come out. What you said, April 1st. That's going to be released. So I guess, is there more to talk about with that, or you want to try to keep that one close to your chest? Is there more things you want to say about it? Because I know we've talked a lot about Diesel Day, because I'm obviously very motivated by Diesel Day, and we have people coming to Diesel Day. And there's a handful of you guys who are still on the fence who are listening to this and you haven't signed up for it, so you better actually sign up for it. But I would like to talk about how you intend to implement that if you want to. Otherwise, you can come back on after you launch it and then talk about how great that is.
I'd love to talk about it a little bit, because the more I talk about it, the better I understand what I want to do, and how I want to do it, what I want to deliver. I want to create a program. It's not online programming like, oh, I'm going to sign up for Rich Froning's online programming and just do his workouts, right? This is more of a online programming that creates programs workouts, opportunities for challenge in a community to that I can leverage my training savvy and put one little piece on of adversity or challenge. Let's just say challenge, right? A little friction. And then also understanding, because I already know, hey, you're going to experience this, you're going to experience this, you're going to have these questions, whatever. And then so there's also like a concept card built around everything that I do. It's not just me programming a 15-minute AMRAP and I know that you're going to get fitter. It's very, very intentional. I'm intending to deliver this with this workout, and you're going to know a little bit about it beforehand, and it's not going to give away any of the experience or change any of the experience. And then after you do it, there's going to be content to help you develop what you experienced, and we'll do that through I'll talk about that in a second. There's also going to be a really, really, really big monthly challenge that you get ahead of time, that you'll actually have time then to be able to plan for, to insulate yourself and create opportunities of resource and support so that you can do it, because long events get challenging in time, and we all have a lot of competing interests with our time. And then we will have monthly Zoom opportunities, so that everybody that did do an experience, if they choose to, we'll get on a Zoom and we'll reflect back the month previous, and we'll show different ways, different strategies that we collectively decided to solve, or what we collectively experienced or didn't experience, and learn from each other in a guided discussion type format. And then there'll be email that goes out, and there'll be thoughts and conversations and processing and reflections that through guided discussion and emails. So what I intend to do is launch a private Instagram group, and you will pay your monthly fee to get access to the private Instagram group, to get access to the Zoom calls, you get access to the emails, the one-on-ones, in the development of all of that, and we'll create the community of people that do that. What am I trying to do? I've got a whole bunch of things written on the board, and I'm synthesizing how I want to just say it. But the gist of it is, I want to try to help you suck less, right?
Yeah.
In your assessment of how you're sucking, I want to help reshape your paradigms that you have. I want to inform your belief structures. I want to create opportunities for you to meet yourself and develop this psychological resiliency. Because I can't control what the world is going to expose you to, but in the concept model of here's your margins, exposing you to little things, dosing you appropriately, prudently, and creatively to different things will allow you to expand your margins. And if I expand your margin a little bit in this direction, it'll make you more capable of dealing with an unknown and unknowable that we can't control, right? And that's what the hard way is. And I was thinking about it. Actually had a phenomenal conversation. Went down to see Bill in his ranch in Texas for a few days, and we just kind of talking about it. And he's phenomenal, and helping me shape this. It's like everybody wants to be absolutely hard and tough, and we're all artificially inspired by somebody that does this inordinately fascinating feat, and then we think if we just recreate that feat and do it ourselves, that we're going to arrive. And no, it's all about the little tiny baby steps that you took over time. For me, it's been 30 years of my life of doing little things. Some of them are step ups, some of them are completely different staircases, and just incrementally. I didn't get to rowing across an ocean in one day. It was a culmination of 30 years of experiences, some more favorable than others, right? And experiences at so many different things. And that's how I grew to doing, the Turkey Trot 5K, to doing a triathlon, to doing a marathon, to doing a 24-hour mountain bike race, to doing an adventure race, to mountain biking the Continental Divide, to whatever it is. But we get fascinated with the big things in instant gratification, and we challenge those. And what happens is we fail. And we're not armed with the time under tension, how to deal with failure correctly. And what it does is informs us, and it reinforces a lot of the negative stuff. And all that did was put us on a bad habit or a bad program if gone uncorrectly mentored. And so this is a mentoring process to get you to take little steps and introduce you to different ways that you can take little steps in the physical world. But also, there will be monthly challenges for periods of time that will test psychological space and help you inform what do you want to believe in, and taking a value set, right? Like we're supposed to believe in something. We're supposed to have values. So, well, this is valuable. We're at everything that's valuable to us that we want to be. We've got 47 things written down. Well, that gets intimidating to hold on to being true and consistent to 47 things. Can we look for commonality between those things? And can we distill that list down and reduce it to 3 things and just do those 3 things, knowing that it is going to have an effect on the other 44 in some form or fashion, maybe not to solve them, but to at least put your growth trajectory in an upward curve instead of a flat line or worse downward curve. And so that's what the hard way is really going to be about. And I'm excited. I'm really excited. Something that we've been thinking about, and ultimately it's opening up a lot of Diesel Day materials to a greater audience that are there's impediments to them actually coming to Colorado for a long weekend, right? We all have different competing interests and obstacles, whether it's financial or personal or professional, whatever it is. And so this is able to open up my offering, right? And Diesel Day will actually be sort of a subset of the hard way. It doesn't mean that you have to be part of the hard way to do a Diesel Day. It's just a Diesel Day is a hard way event.
Right.
It just happens to be, boom, a standalone piece, but a lot of the same lessons, a lot of the same teachings and mentorings that occur at a Diesel Day will be sprinkled through and populate the hard way. It's just a bunch different incremental approach than taking a giant leap to that 40-inch box of Diesel Day.
I love it.
Here's what my next challenge is real quick. I want to do one more thing, then I can let you guys go. I'm totally taking over your podcast.
It's all right. That's what we're here for.
This is what I'm playing with in my head now for a new challenge. I came across this guy on the Instagram someplace, and he talked about something. So it's not necessarily my original thought. But I am entertaining. I want to lock myself into a sensory deprivation, total isolation compartment for like 6 days. He has, and I'm going to find out, and I was going to do a podcast, and I was going to do an Instagram on this. When I got to go back and figure out who this guy was. I just have to do a little research. But the gist of what he was saying is anybody can do it for 30 minutes. Anybody can do it for 3 hours. Some people can do it for 24, but it's not until really you get past your comfort, your threshold for discomfort into this weird place that you actually have an incredible psychological, psychedelic experience.
Transcendence. Yeah.
Right. Without taking some sort of mind-altering substance. Not that stuff's bad or anything. I'm a little bit spooked by doing this too, which means that's the direction I should be going.
Sure.
Because that's where it's spooky, is where there's great opportunity there.
How'd I know it was going to involve you locking yourself in something though? I knew that was coming. I'll never forget your mother being like, when you locked yourself in the shipping container, how panicked she was. I was like, I can't talk him out of it. So you know, and he's going to do these things. And that was only for a little while. So that's, I like it. I mean, I think that's a very cool, no doubt that would be having been in one for an hour and 2 hours, it's quite the experience. 6 days would definitely be a hallucinogenic experience for sure. Transcendental might be the politically correct way to say it, but it would be good for you.
We have to go past our limits.
Yeah.
If we want to explore new territory, we can't always be butted up against our threshold. We have a lot to learn from our thresholds, and being butted up as close as possible without going over that line, that event horizon. And there's a tremendous amount of growth that occurs when you're but I believe a very smart, shrewd, safely constructed experience that actually puts you in a completely unknown place can be exceptionally powerful. And we have to just be really, really smart to make it powerful in a positive way because if it exists to be exceptionally powerful in a positive way, we know from yin and yang, right? Like it also has the opportunity to be very, very powerful in a supremely negative way. And we need to control things to make sure that we're arming ourselves to always be on the positive side of that line. But jumping into this beyond event horizon threshold, like, I think that's I'm not gonna suppose enlightenment or transcendence, but I think it can be a wicked experience. And this guy that I came across was suggesting it. He did something similar to it, and I want to just do a little bit more research on that before we get into it.
No, I like it. I mean, if anybody could do it, it's obviously going to be you. I mean, obviously, I know it's not necessarily a physical thing, although it would be very physical to be in there without any sensory motivation or any sensory input. So now, when you don't have a plan when you're doing that yet, though, or you just
Yeah,
coming
probably
up?
not anytime soon. I need to finish recouping everything that I've learned from this row and dig
Yeah,
into my three priorities for life over the next 365. I've really come back from this row. Before going on the row, I said, hey, before going on the row, I set out and said, hey, in 2023, I am going to focus on these three things. And if it doesn't support those three things, I have to say no. I just wanted to. I found myself being all over the place in 2023, 2022, 2021, and a lot of things were put way lower on my prioritization list because of the row being at the top.
yeah,
And I want to get reconnected with those things and repair some of the lost opportunities that occurred because of that.
I love it. I mean,
Perfect.
having known you for 10 years, every time you go away and do something, you come back as a much more profound version of yourself. And so I look forward to you continuing to unpack the lessons you learned from that row, because obviously I will be benefited by that in my proximity as your friend. I'm also pumped to hear you say everything about the hard way, because as somebody who's completed diesel day, like I said, I've been looking for some degree of that microdose of that drug ever since. So is it April 1st yet? I'll be there with bells on, whatever that looks like. I'm not even sure what that means, but I will be there. But I'm looking forward to it. And obviously, if I can support you anyway, you got my back there. But those are all very exciting things. I don't know about the whole 6 day and the thing, but you'll find a way to make it fun for me to watch. Although watching you in a tube for 6 days might not be the most fun thing, but it was fun when you were in the shipping container.
Yeah.
So
more
cool.
fun for you.
I will see you soon. I feel like it's only a few weeks away. It's about 2 months away at this point. I appreciate you. I think this is the longest podcast ever in history, but I would stay on here for hours with this thing, but I know you're as busy as anybody else is. So where do we find out any more information? The hard way will come out. There's nothing out about it yet, correct? Or is there stuff out of the waiting list or anything like that to sign up for?
No, just a little teaser I put out a couple times before the row. I'm getting ready. You can expect to see some things here in the next 2 weeks. Because I really, before I present it and show it, I want to have really spent a lot of time behind it on the front side. It's not one of those shoot the name.
And that does go live. We will definitely send it out to everybody on our list so that they have access to it for you, so that you guys can get into it. But dude, always a pleasure. I want to talk to you more about the row, but we'll talk about that another time, and then I'll see you soon.
Right on, brother.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Tosh. Love the chat.
Thank you, my friend, for listening to the FitFilliate podcast. If you would be interested in hopping on a free call with us to just kind of chat about what you think your problems are and what you think the gap is between where you're at and where you want to go, we can see if maybe we can help you along that journey, figure out if we're all a good fit to do some sweet things together. So click the link, set up a consult. Let's help you identify some problems that we can mutually solve.